if you've ever wondered about document signing, e-signatures, and exactly what that means, right? I think for us as people that use this type of technology, it seems pretty easy, right? You upload a document, you attach an e-signature, and you send it along. But I think there's a little bit more to it today. And Impression Signatures here, I have Kerry and I have Peter with me, are going to detail to us exactly how and what's involved in getting something like e-signatures and e-signing up and running. So it's a pleasure I produce Kerry and Peter from Impression Signatures.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much, and thank you all of you for sticking around for the graveyard shift. We really appreciate it, and especially those of us who are joining online. We hope that you can hear us and that you get a lot of value out of our discussion. I'm Kerry. I'm the MD of Impression Signatures. This is Peter, our head of technology.
Hi, guys.
And yeah, so Lee has told you a little bit about what e-signatures are, maybe given you a bit of a context of how they work and how they would be applied in your normal environment. But there's actually, I mean, as he said, quite a bit more to it. And we're here today to talk about why there's quite a bit more to it, what the complexity is, and how AWS allowed us to disrupt an entire industry. Impression started in around about 2011, where our big red banking client came to us and said that they couldn't find an electronic signing solution that, A, met the requirements of the South African ECT Act. Yep, e-signatures are legislated and regulated, and met their security requirements. These are two very important things to understand from a market point of view. But more than that, what we uncovered in the investigation of trying to find them an e-signing solution that met those two requirements was that the market itself was actually fundamentally broken. We're going to get into the detail of how that was broken and how we were unable to unlock AWS to allow us to revolutionize and truly disrupt this market. But first, just a little bit of detail about what electronic signatures are. Like I said, they're legislated, they're regulated. There is actual very strict technical controls around what constitutes a simple signature, an electronic signature, and a digital signature over here. Essentially, the core element that makes a signature electronic or digital is the application of an encryption certificate at the moment of signing. The ECT Act mandates that an electronic signature needs to remain under the sole control of the user. So think about that. Think about signing scenarios where anybody can get hold of your signature, anybody can take your signature, stick it on a document, PDF it, and pretend like that was a signature. You can understand that situations like this are susceptible to fraud. We're obviously never allowed to talk about any of the cases that we've seen because those would be part of a forensic investigation. But it is quite common for fraud to take place in this particular context. I can call to mind 140 million rand contract at it's in the public domain. I won't say who, but 140 million rand lost to a fraudulently signed contract, and that's just one case that ended up in the public domain. And then we have at the bottom here what's called a digital signature. Now, in South Africa, it's referred to as an advanced electronic signature. In Europe or other regions, it's called a qualified electronic signature. What differentiates a normal electronic signature from a qualified or advanced electronic signature is the application of a personal certificate. That's a certificate issued to an individual, and in South Africa, at a face-to-face identification. So we're issuing a cryptographic identity to an individual in an in-person identification process that is subsequently controlled from a use point of view under the sole control of the user and applied to documents to ensure that this document, this consent, this intent was contracted with the individual that you know, that you recognize. And that type of signature is afforded special privileges under South African law and actually pretty much under every legislation on the planet. It's called non-repudiation. And I don't know if you guys all know that Shaggy song, It Wasn't Me. Well, we can prove that it was you. And therefore, you are bound by the terms of this agreement that you intended to sign. All right. more about why the market was broken. And bear in mind, I mean, we're here at AWS. This is the fundamental crux of what we're going to talk about today, is how we were able to fix this market with disruptive technology. So first of all, because we are the custodians of the issuance of a cryptographic identity, we are responsible for encryption. We hold the keys to the kingdom. I don't know if you guys, there's a movie that talks about the 7 people who hold the keys to the internet. It is truly a bit of a James Bond moment in some of these respects. But if you think about the amount of security that we would have to deploy in order to ensure that we are protecting the encryption keys that subsequently encrypt all of our customers' data, all of our digital identities, you can understand there's quite an overhead. And it starts with the high costs of compliance. We spend a couple of million rand a year on our audit. It is an annual audit. And it is there in order to ensure that our encryption is safe. That has significant infrastructure costs. You have to have data centers. I mean, I was recently going through the controls the other day, and to put things in perspective, our office has to be in a Faraday cage. Right, you guys know what a Faraday cage is? That's surrounded by metal so that it can block all sorts of signals. That's just one of the couple of hundred controls that we need to comply with in order to house the keys that we hold. Thirdly, outdated solution design. There were not a lot of opportunities to democratize or make accessible these critical components that are involved in the signing process and in the encryption process and in the identification process. And then lastly, I mean, all of this results in high fixed costs. And what do you think all 4 of these add up to? Well, it adds up to the costs being passed on to the customer. And that allowed us, and from a timing standpoint, we're very fortunate to be so young, at about 14 years old. That allowed us to take advantage of 2 major shifts in the industry, which was, first of all, the introduction of the AWS Cloud HSM. Now, is there anybody here who's ever had to use one of those little tokens? Maybe you've ever published code to a bank environment. One of those little tokens, or maybe one of those little cards that you have to slot into your computer before you can perform an action. These things are hardware security modules. But by creating a Cloud HSM, that phone in your pocket can suddenly become a secure device that can be used in these application of an identity or signing scenario. So that was absolutely liberating from a hardware requirement point of view. And we're going to go a bit into the security of how AWS has actually made that cloud relationship possible. And then lastly, the Web Trust audit, and I'm going to go into a bit of detail around that, hopefully not too much detail so we all stay awake, it's late. It created a framework for auditing things called registration authorities. The combination of these 2 shifts in a regulatory and standards framework point of view and a technology service provision point of view allowed us to completely revolutionize how people were able to experience the signing process or that moment of consent. Okay, guys, this is the fear bit, but it's also the assurance bit. There is this, in order to get accreditation in South Africa, there is a body called the South African Accreditation Authority, and they mandate what's called a Web Trust audit. Some people will tell you that the Web Trust audit is the highest level of cybersecurity assurance you can get on the planet. And as you can see, it incorporates some of the most fundamental controls that we all need to apply when we are dealing with private data, when we're dealing with cybersecurity and environments that need to protect our operations. Yeah, I mean, guys, it's pretty hardcore. It's a 3-month audit. And even to audit us, our auditors have to be accredited and earn accreditation with Web Trust just to conduct the audit. And if you're interested, a Web Trust audit allows you to, I don't know, you guys know, those little locks on a website, an SSL certificate? A Web Trust audit allows you as a trust service provider to issue those certificates and be trusted on the web of the internet, hence Web Trust. So Peter's going to give you a bit of detail around the Cloud HSM. It really is a truly revolutionary concept. And yeah, like I said, it allowed us to liberate you from those little cards.
Thank you, Kerry. Yes, that's right. So the HSMs are, for all intents and purposes, our secret sauce. These hardware appliances allow us to store, securely store encrypted keys that we generate via our CA infrastructure. You can go on to the next slide. Thank you, Kerry.
Okay.
Right, and what you're seeing here is a real-world example of how we would deploy the signing process within our organization. So the role that the HSMs play. Think of it like this. Any piece of information in the world, in the digital realm, has a fingerprint, a unique fingerprint. And we have the ability then to take that fingerprint, push it through to our HSMs, have it sign a digest that it spits out that can be very easily validated against the second key, which we call a public key. In that process, with that signed digest, it's impossible to replicate it again without the private key. So that's the security that the HSM modules provide us with. Thank you, Kerry.
Okay, so this is a bit of an agenda for those of you who are interested. We're about to go through how we built a certificate authority in AWS, what our security considerations were, and a very important thing to understand. And for those of you who are interested in this whole data sovereignty debate, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the mandated business continuity practices that require cross-regional failover, and actually what cross-regional failover is, compliance. In the end, in our world, it doesn't matter how much security we've deployed unless we can provide sufficient ongoing evidence that that is in place. We will not pass our annual audit. And then lastly, just a couple of additional considerations that those of you who are trying to deploy secure architecture and secure infrastructure and secure solutions might want to take into account. So it's a bit of a how-to. Now, I spoke a bit about how the market was broken, and I've used the word disruptor, and I've at least teed you guys up to understand how AWS was able to make that happen. But it's really important to understand. If you want to build a certificate authority, first you have to build a data center. That data center has to be earthquake proof, that Faraday cage that I spoke about, so, lightning doesn't strike. It has to have very stringent temperature controls. It has to have incredible failover capabilities. It has to have a 6-foot wall. It has to have electric fences. And sometimes it has to have guys with guns. It has to have 7 physical levels of access control. Are you guys starting to understand how those costs rack up in a traditional scenario? Great. When we were tasked with building a certificate authority, we were able to do so in AWS in 8 months. Our audit took longer. All right? And obviously, as you guys know, here we are. It was all possible because of AWS.
Right.
Guys, who's ever had to do an audit here? Put your hand up. Yeah? PTSD support group?
Right. So at Impression Signatures, our core focus is building digital identity solutions, not managing complicated compliance frameworks. Now, AWS has over 143 regulatory and compliance attestations, and these are some of the ones that we care about in our environment. And the beauty about this is that we don't need to worry about the complexity when it comes to this. We can focus on product and know that AWS takes care of all of our hardware compliance. When the seamless transition for us into FIPS 143 Level 3 was a game changer. I was speaking to Lee the other day about the Level 4 requirements, and the personal access controls that are required are insane. For us as a small organization, we would never be able to stand that up in a cost-effective manner. Thanks, Harry.
And I mean, guys, okay, you really have to understand the implications of that seamless transition. We don't have, HSM, they're going to their second version at the end of this year. Because of backward compatibility, because of the obligation that AWS has to us as a customer, we don't have to worry about that. We just have to make sure that our stuff is in order. The rest of it is really honestly taken care of for us. And that has such an incredible impact in your operational speed. It's
Right. And we built our VPCs with private subnets to completely isolate our CA operations. Network ACLs and security groups create multiple layers of network isolation within our environment, and we continuously monitor our environment using AWS config. So this infrastructure design took us weeks, not months, to implement. And we rely on Amazon Q for intelligent ticket analysis and to surface our internal documentation. With role-based access controls, our support team only has access to the information that they need, and that enhances our security posture throughout the organization.
Think about it. I mean, we joke about the Air Canada incident. I'm sure you guys all know what that is. But when you're dealing with encryption, when you're dealing with people's private data, when you're dealing with holding people's private keys on their behalf, how you talk about what you do, how you have implemented what you do, how you support what you do, every piece of information that you could potentially put out in the world is, on one hand, a route to hack you, and on the other hand, your IP. So protecting that and making that information available to the right people at the right time is absolutely fundamental. We also have, as an obligation to our business continuity practices, the requirement to remove at all times every single point of failure in the business. Do you know what a single point of failure is? It means a key man dependency where a person ends up in hospital and can no longer come to work and you lose the ability to function. It is having single regions, so having a single data center that can be taken down, and then what happens? When you're dealing with 999 uptime, you can't afford those sorts of things. And when it comes to Amazon Q, things like creating the right sort of access to information to the right people at the right time can significantly improve your ability to upskill people, and in our environment, as I'm sure you guys are starting to get the picture, into very niche skill sets can reduce that time. So being able to segregate that data, make it available to the right people, make sure it doesn't go to the wrong people is absolutely critical.
Right. So my job at Impression Signatures is to make sure that we implement zero trust infrastructure. And this is very difficult to get right when we're trying to retrofit existing systems. So when we transitioned from an RA to a CA, we needed to think about this problem very deeply. And what we learned from that process was the importance of taking security very seriously right from the start. So these are some of the tools that we rely on very heavily on a foundational level within the AWS stack. You can take a closer look at them. AWS IAM assists us with controlling permissions right down to individual API calls. Multi-factor authentication, for instance, is used for every sensitive operation within our organization. And we very heavily rely on AWS CloudTrail for immutable audit logs throughout our organization.
So think about, again, that audit use case that I was talking about. Again, not only is it good enough for us to secure our architecture and to secure our environment, we have to prove every single year with our logs, with our access control, that absolutely nobody who is not appropriate to access our environment has had access. 2 million rand a year of our revenue or of our costs goes to proving without a doubt that nobody has had access to our environment. You guys know zero trust, right? Trust absolutely no one. Lock them all out. Make sure nobody can come in. Give them access for just the right amount of time, and then prove that you revoked it. And then, you know what? Prove every single thing that they did while they were there. And also provide this in such a way that when somebody who is appointed comes and asks, you can show them with absolute certainty that this is what happened in your world.
Right. So data protection at every layer isn't just a slogan for us. It's literally the way that we have to operate. So we rely on transport layer security. AWS hardware-backed key store, KMS, as well as Amazon S3 to store our certificate information securely.
And I mean, I hope some of you guys were able to pick up some of the earlier chats where even when we're talking about Gen AI, they're asking you to issue your own keys out of KMS, store them, and use those keys to encrypt and secure all of your operations that you're going to deploy in your environment. So, I mean, maybe you're not doing e-signing. Maybe you just want to use keys properly. Maybe you just want to use encryption properly in your environment. These tools are available and accessible and secured. And in our case, audited to the highest standard.
Right. So all this would be futile if we were to go down. Our customers' digital identities depend on our ability to be available. With 99.99% availability SLAs, point-in-time recovery, and automated failovers, we know that AWS takes care of any infrastructure risk that we face. So we get to focus on the certificate authority build.
So I hinted a little bit about that data center that I would have to maintain. And the fact that I would actually have to maintain a second one, because I am mandated to have multi-geographic region failover. What multi-geographic region failover means, it means that I cannot have data centers in the same country. It can't be Joburg and Cape Town. It has to be entirely different countries. The reason being, maybe a bomb drops on one of those cities where a data center is, or maybe, and we've seen this happen, maybe they switch off the internet for an entire country for some or other reason. So we have to have full regional failover, and that obviously poses a risk, as you guys will have hinted at a little bit earlier, for this data sovereignty idea. But you have to choose. You have to choose between your rules in terms of uptime and your obligations in terms of uptime, or your data sovereignty. And luckily, I mean, there's a lot of paths to do multi-region stuff these days. But the reason for that is, if I'm holding your identity, if I'm holding your ability to sign a transaction, to consent to something, I have to make sure that you are able to access that identity at any point in time. Imagine I want to admit you to hospital. Imagine you're unconscious and I want to admit you to hospital, and they know I need consent for this person, and there are mechanisms by which we can provide consent in those sorts of scenarios. I have to be able to make sure that you are admitted. I can never go down. Imagine you want to make a transaction on Amazon in the middle of the night because you've been Instagramming for a little bit too long. I have to be able to honor that transaction, and that is why these things are mandated from a business continuity point of view. And again, let me remind you, imagine if I have to build a data center in this country, build and maintain a data center in this country, in this country's regulations, in this country's electricity landscape, and then I have to go all the way over here and build another data center in this country. It's wild when you start to think about how those costs can spiral out of control. Sure, guys, this is a big one.
So we can all agree that AWS makes it easy for us. But it's very important to understand that we still have a responsibility within the shared security model. Accountability for application security still remains with us. Every line of code that we write needs to be secure. AWS takes care of the infrastructure security, and we take care of the application security.
Yeah, this model, and I think, I mean, guys, you've seen it in the public domain. You've seen it in the news. Oaks who didn't configure their EC2s correctly. Oaks who didn't configure or left their S3 buckets with the standard setup on them, and that led to significant data breaches. This shared responsibility model means you can't just fire and forget. We've just gone through all of these amazing things that have made this super secure thing possible in the cloud. But you cannot forget your responsibilities and your obligations. And honestly, if you're building in AWS, I'd chat to them. They have an incredible amount of support that they're able to provide you to guide you towards making sure that you hold up your side of the bargain. And as Impression, as the world's first certificate authority in cloud-based infrastructure, we're going to appeal to you guys as users of AWS and users of cloud to make sure that we all secure what is cloud. Because every single one of us who lets down cloud lets down our ability to leverage these game-changing, break bulk access to high security infrastructure.
Right, so I think what's important to consider here is, under additional considerations, there are plenty of things that make the AWS platform a really good investment for you from a technical perspective. For us, the AWS Cost Explorer, for instance, has become a critical tool to manage the way that money gets used within our organization. And we've had great benefit making use of some of the automated recommendations to reduce price, or at least to reduce costing within our environment. And I really do encourage you to check those out. They really are useful. I don't know if you know this, but AWS has reduced pricing over 140 times since inception. So that directly benefits everyone that builds on top of their platform. Maybe you want to say something about that, Carrie?
Yeah, I mean, look, we were able last year. Do you guys remember last year there was like a little bit of like exchange rate fluctuation and the rand, and we were all like, we were able to mitigate all of the exchange rate fluctuations last year through our AWS cost savings.
Pretty significant, right. So serverless architecture is also a game changer for us. It really allows us to rapidly prototype new services. We can very easily spin up something, put it out, and have our customers test it. And you're going to learn after this session why serverless is so important for cybersecurity within your organization. But that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Carrie, who's going to take you through some of the custom use cases.
Yeah,
Thanks,
look,
Carrie.
I just want to say something about that serverless architecture thing. I don't know if any of you guys have ever had to go through those like 40-page, 300-point checklist Excels for when you deploy to banks or hospitals. We've been there. The greatest thing is being able to check serverless, because that takes out an entire list of potential vulnerabilities that you then don't have to worry about, and they then don't have to worry about. It's quite revolutionary. Now, we've done the fear bit. We've done the warning. We've done the, yo, it's hectic. The point of all of this means nothing if you're not able to obfuscate all of that complexity from your end customer. And this is my favorite bit, because now I get to talk about the really cool stuff that people are doing in the world. We just happen to be able to be part of it. That is an absolute privilege, because these guys are so cool. These guys are absolutely amazing. So the model was broken because the cost of participation in economic activities was being passed on to the end user. All right? In this scenario, people are renting gas cans. There's a very cool little device that sits on top that allows you to buy gas, pay as you go. Now, if you think about that sort of scenario, a person who can't afford to buy a gas can and can only afford to buy a couple of shillings of gas every single day is certainly not a person who can bear the cost of signing a contract in such an expensive scenario. So by enabling, in our case, our patented USSD technology, we're able to take a person who traditionally would not be able to participate in a formalized consent activity, allow them to sign a proper contract that affords rights on both sides of the deal, and actually get to what they're trying to do, and that's cook dinner. In a scenario where every cent counts. This, guys, is the coolest solution. We absolutely love it. So again, USSD consent. This is another blue-collar case. Yeah, we can't mention, you're not allowed to mention the customers, eh? You can talk about the project or the customer, not both. But this is a very cool consent scenario. So what we've got here is we've got people who are applying for jobs or people who need to be verified in order to get gainful employment. In some of these scenarios, we've got multiple people in a household with access to a single device. We need to be able to differentiate who is signing, who is actually granting consent. And in this particular scenario, we're granting consent for criminal record checks. These are deeply private and, you know, important to secure pieces of information about people. But more importantly, this is their route to getting a job. So we're, again, able to allow people who do not have tons of access, who are trying to get access to opportunities, to go ahead and move forward on the next step. Our company on the one side is getting their formal processes checked, audited, a signed contract on the back end, able to run all of their compliance responsibilities, and the guy over here is about to get a job and go work in that scenario for that customer. And then lastly, this is a pretty cool one. It's actually one of my favorites. This exact scenario was able to help one of our banks save 3 million rand a month. This was their own internal ROI calculation, all right? It's embarrassing because they weren't paying us nearly that much every year. But anyway, let me talk about this. Our bank decided that while telephonic contracts are enforceable in South Africa, it didn't meet their security requirements. They wanted an additional factor of authentication that allowed them to create that signed contract on the back end, but conclude that contract telephonically with an additional factor of authentication. And they chose our USSD solution because, according to their assessment, USSD is real time, because we can make that session live for 30 seconds, 15 seconds, a minute. It's not like an SMS that sits around and I've got a 4.5-year-old. I don't know if you guys have kids. You know how quickly they want to get hold of your phone. Oh, no, it wasn't me who clicked that link and signed. It was my child. It allowed them to conclude those contracts on the telephone instantly with an additional factor of authentication. Again, a semi-offline process that is concluded digitally in their world. And what's very cool about our very, very clever customers is that because these documents are now digital, we're able to transport them between different systems. In fact, our documents, once they're signed, we apply a thing that's called a chain of custody. And on our chain of custody, we have this little barcode. And we give all our customers a NuGet package, actually free of charge, that they can just install in S3, for example, that reads the barcode, gets the metadata payload of that barcode, allows them through Glue to apply all of their data access control rules around that particular document or consent, and continue to progress that document through their system, archive it, control access, and all of this is happening in fractions of a second without any human intervention. So the next step for us, I've said digital identity, I've said digital credentials, I've spoken about USSD, but this is the other end of the scale. And this is, again, that objective that we're always trying to achieve with our customers of obfuscating the complexity from their customers. We're able, through our signing process, to capture a full facial biometric as part of the signing process. Check with Hannes. Yes, this is the person who they say they are. In some of our integrated scenarios, we're able to check whether the person has medical aid, so they can actually be admitted to a hospital. Check whether they have, as we've said, criminal record checks. Check whether we want to actually give them insurance. Do we trust them? Are they on a fraud list? And all of this happens in a simple 5-step consent scenario. You guys can get, or our customers can get, a fully signed document at the end. Do you want the document? Do you want the biometric stored in the document? Yes or no? Do you want the biometric stored somewhere else? It's really entirely up to you. None of this concern gets passed on to your customer. And what we found so interesting in this scenario is that when a person is goal-driven, when they want that handset, they want that cell phone, they are certainly a lot more willing to participate in intrusive biometric consent activities. And you guys are going to notice the legislative acceptance of biometric validation or verification is being proliferated. You guys are going to see in the next couple of months, maybe the next year or so, our government is going to start putting out very specific criteria around the standards that will be accepted in biometrics. That's going to be pretty cool. If you happen to be in biometrics, be sure to participate in the green papers that come out from that. But in the end, this is very well accepted. And the reason this is very well accepted is, again, certainty of identity. And lastly, references available on request. We don't publish We don't publish who our customers are. There are a couple of our customers published in the public domain. We don't publish who our customers are. I know it's generally considered not the ideal marketing scenario, but that's simply to protect our customers from potential phishing attacks. When we saw the phishing attacks emerge, posing as eSigning solutions, we took all our customer badges off the website. So our references really are available on request. But there's some amazing stories that have come out of this. One of our customers had a mandate to get all of their documents signed within 6 weeks. Before they started using Impression, they couldn't get all of their documents signed off within 6 weeks. They were getting fines as a result of that. Once they implemented Impression, they were getting them all signed off in the same day. That risk and those fines went away. We have entire companies that have digitized their governance, risk, and compliance functions through our e-signing. And it's not necessarily that all of the documents are being electronically signed now. It's our ability to integrate into the other systems of record and completely remove human error from the process that is allowing these speed to operations to actually start taking effect. I spoke about the printing use case where they did an ROI and managed to figure out how much money they were saving. Guys, I once spoke to a customer who I was privileged enough to be on a support call, and I spoke to the customer who was like, "Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I used to drive 6 hours to get a signature." Someone paid that person to get in a car, drive 6 hours and get a signature. That is wild. Yeah, again, I spoke about that ability to integrate directly into the systems of records, into the ERPs, into the CRMs. I think we have something like 10, probably more than 10 different connectors into, respected systems of record. In fact, Microsoft is one of our most popular connectors. We're even referenced in Microsoft Docs. That was quite an achievement. Where people are able to, within your infrastructure, within your governed, access-controlled SharePoint, do everything they need to do with the document and then just hit send. All installed, actually, at an admin level on your Active Directory. And then lastly, guys, COVID, rapid implementation. We had a customer who, within 10 days of the start of COVID, had digitized their entire sales process so that they could continue operating when the world shut down and we weren't allowed to meet with people in person. 10 days. We have a large telco that, from the day of tender award to the day they went live, was 3 weeks. And that was into a very, very large system of record. Oh, I'm not even going to tell you which one. And I think, again, the ability to deliver all of this, the ability to deliver it in a cost-effective way, the ability to take what we saw as a broken industry and make it accessible was enabled by AWS. So, yeah, thanks, guys. We actually managed to do this in record time. We practiced very well. So I wonder if anybody has any questions. Anybody want to know anything? Okay, I'm going to turn this on. Working? How do I turn it on? Skills. Okay.
It's on. It's on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for the lovely presentation, guys. I just, as a developer, I would just like to find out about the API use for e-signing. How much does it cost per API call, and what are the limitations of it?
Okay, it's a REST API.
Yes.
So we'll take a JSON payload. It is actually, the API documentation is available on our website. In terms of costs, you're welcome to come and chat to us.
Okay.
And also, if you'd like to request a UAT key, you're welcome to come and chat to us about that.
Yeah.
Hi. So I just wanted to ask, how long, so let's say we decided that we're going to take your services, and how long does that implementation take until the system is fully functional and the new people can start signing digitally?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I
how
forgot
long
to
is the
mention.
implementation?
I've spoken only about our integrated use
Yeah,
cases.
so it's great. It's amazing.
There's this bank. These guys are the bravest people I have ever seen in my entire life. They decided to take our, what we call dashboard, which is what your internal users would have access to. They decided to take our dashboard signing live in 48 hours at month end.
Wild.
Those are the bravest people I've ever met in my whole life. So yeah, that's as simple as an AD integration, which your team will do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. No,
It's just
thank
a
you so
permissions
much.
thing. Anybody else? All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for your attention. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.